3. Socialism sucks. We are going to talk about a lot of things, a lot of relevant things in the stream.
Now I think I have my mic working and I don't have my headphones working for some reason. Come on.
Silly Sailor, entertain the chat.
Mad Merc, please keep saying something so I can
Right.
see if I can get
well,
to
I'll
the point where
just
I'm hearing
explain where this all came from. Very recently, we were talking about interest rates and where the world economy is going. And basically, we came to the conclusion that Okay, Red Lobe's going to go. We came to the conclusion that we need to do a show on these two topics. And, well, it's technically 3, but we're going to cram it into 2. We'll see how we go. And we'll try and do the topics of the war on cash, which we'll get into, and the banning or the reduction of use of physical notes within the economy, and negative interest rates. And the two are very highly integrated because the reason we have this war on cash is so we can so central banks across the world can use negative interest rates. Because when we get into negative interest rates, you'll see the problems that physical cash, people having physical cash, has when using negative interest rates.
Okay. I think I'm finally sorted. You can hear me, right?
I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. Sorry about all that. Things seem to have settled down on the Mac here.
Right.
Good. So you've introduced war on cash. I guess
very briefly.
Yeah. Well, okay. Why don't we start with some current events, just to illustrate that we're not making this up, right?
Go for it.
Let's see if I can pull something up from our chat real quick.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a link. This is going to be a very link-heavy show.
Yeah, how about the Bloomberg article? Sound good?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm going to paste the link and then see if I can manage to share my tab here. Okay. And then let's, sorry guys for the rough going here, share screen.
Silly Say, you hit the nail on the head.
Who? What?
Oh, question in the chat. He's just hit the nail on the head without even us having to say anything.
Oh, what do you mean?
Obvious question. Why would anyone invest when they could keep money under their mattress? And that is the exactly what we're going to get into with negative interest rates.
Right, exactly. So, but let's start with, oh wait, where are we starting? I'm doing negative interest rates. Whatever. We're going to talk about war on cash. Okay, it's all related. So let's start here. Is that okay, Mad Merc? I'm a bit disorganized here.
Sure, but we can start here.
Okay, sorry guys, a little crazy today. Okay, so let's see. So they've already been here. 5 years of negative rates imposed by the European Central Bank. And then many banks have been passing on negative rates to retail clients for big clients. So most of us would not, regular mortals would not be seeing such things. But let's see if we can find the example here. Did I get the wrong article? Oh, darn. This is not the article I wanted. I want the one where it shows charging on the first euro. Darn it. Where's that?
We bring you the best content in this show.
Well, darn it. What did I do with... Okay. Anyway, sorry.
Perhaps we should start with war on cash because I think that
Yeah,
leads
go
much
ahead.
better into negative interest rates.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
War on cash. What is it? Well, essentially, the war on cash is the removal of physical notes from an economy. So the idea is that you remove the notes from an economy, and more people have to use banking online, ones and zeros transactions. So they do it through a card. They do it through their computer, through their phone, through electronic means. They remove the physical element. Now, what is this trying to achieve? Well, it depends who you talk to. So if you talk to European sources, and I'll bring up my sources for this. If you talk to European sources, they are very honest and very blatant about this. This is to stop the problem that we have with negative interest rates. Now, we'll get into these problems when we go directly into negative interest rates, but is to stop the average citizen taking out their savings from the bank. Because with negative interest rates, you're actually paying the bank to have your savings in there. You're not gaining anything. So your investment is losing money. So to stop you from taking your money out and stuffing it under your mattress, they want to make everything into electronic so they can keep it in the bank.
Right.
This is what the Europeans say. This is what has been happening around the world. So, for example, in India, they have banned the $500 and $1,000 note from their economy, which was 80% of their transactions through cash. So that was the most used two notes in their economy, and they completely banned it. And so we have a couple situations where it's an absolute travesty for liberty. Absolute travesty for liberty. It reduces individual choice, so you can't use your money how you want to use it. You have to use the electronic currency, and there's a whole range of ways the government or a central bank can mess with your account because it's all just ones and zeros. So this is where we're essentially coming from this, and we'll get into the studies, but I think that's the foundation.
Okay, so two points I want to get into. First is that I have seen at least one article that sees the rise of Bitcoin as and other kind of cryptocurrencies as part of the war on traditional cash, which would mean, well, very traditionally gold coins and stuff like that, but more recently paper notes that at least can't be tracked to you. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, though if the audience wants to later, maybe we can touch on this. Because for now, I think for the purpose of our discussion, unless you've thought about this a lot, Matt Merck can disagree. For the purpose of our discussion, I think, say, Bitcoin and paper dollars are in the same bucket versus electronic bank money. Is that reasonable, at least for the beginning of our discussion?
For the general layout, yes. But let's steer clear.
We'll come back to it. Okay, yeah, we may come back to it, but that's kind of a rabbit hole, I think, for what we want to discuss today. Okay, so having acknowledged that, I also wanted to talk about the justifications that are given. Matt Merck jumped right to what we believe would be the real crux of the issue, which is basically central banks getting away with the things they're getting away with. But I think I've heard plenty of justifications. Please add to the list, Matt Merck or commenters, if you get a chance. In fact, I'm not seeing the comments. Let me see them. Okay. Stopping illegal activity, right? If you're for cash, you're for people using cash to buy drugs and other kinds of stuff. The state should be able to track every transaction so that it can stop bad ones. You've heard this one, right?
Yes, so this is the black economy argument. This is the argument.
Yeah.
So I mentioned before how the Europeans are more blatant about this being about negative interest rates. So in
Mhm.
Australia and a few other places, they've been more focusing on the black economy aspect, saying that these online transactions will stop and significantly affect the black economy. It will increase the net for tax, and it will stop illicit behavior because it's hard to get away with it because it's all tracked.
Right. So that's one excuse that's given. We, I think, are in agreement already that that's probably not the central issue. Right? I
Well,
mean, I'm
it's not
sure
only not the
somebody
central.
somewhere cares about that, but I don't think it's the real driver. Right?
Right. Just to comment on that, it's not even true. So I have a study here. Um, if it wants to post a link, there we go. And the study is called, if I can bring the link up, da 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 da. If it wants to load, uh, restricting or abolishing cash, an effective instrument for fighting the shadow economy, crime, and terrorism, by Friedrich Schneider. And he correctly points out that the introduction of a cashless society and the cash ban has a very, very limited effect
No, really?
on the shadow economy.
Huh.
So we take the example of Sweden, where they have a very high non-cash society. If you'd like to bring up one of the graphs I sent you through Twitter, and
Yeah,
yet
which
they
one?
still have a moderate to high shadow economy. So
This is
they're
cash payments versus shadow economy. Is that the one?
yes, that's the one.
Okay.
And so we have a bit of a paradox here in that what we're being told is not lining up with the truth. And what we can see is that the correlation between societies and the shadow economy is not as strong of a correlation between the shadow economy and, let's say, GDP or growth. So, for example, for every 10% of fall in GDP, the shadow economy falls something like 18 to 20%. But for every increase in the use of cashless methods of payment, the the shadow economy only falls 2%. So there's the correlation there is not as strong.
Okay, so you're saying it does have an effect. It sounds like,
There is an
but
effect.
it's
No
just
one's
not.
denying
It's
that.
not. It's not. They're making it sound like the more we reduce cash, the less illegal activity goes on, basically, and
Correct. And
it's just
it's
not
not
that simple.
exactly. It's not that
Got it.
simple. I believe there is one more. There is another picture there, and I have a quote from that same,
Are you talking about the simulation results?
very same,
Simulation results,
uh,
Medmerk?
table
Table.
3.2.
Got it.
Table 3.2. So this is a direct quote from the study I linked. In Table 3.2, some simulation results are undertaken about the importance of the cash figure on the size of the shadow economy. Table 3.2 clearly shows that when GDP decreases by 10%, the shadow economy increases by 18.4%. When the share of cash payments decreases by 10%, the shadow economy decreases by 2%. If we make
Hmm.
an assumption that no cash is available anymore, the shadow economy would decrease by 20%. Cash limits have no significant effect on the shadow economy. Unquote.
Well, 20% sounds a little significant, but that's a radical situation where all cash is gone from the economy.
All cash is gone.
Right. And one wonders if that would only be a static effect. That is, sure, at first it decreased, but then people would figure out ways around it and shadow economy would just quietly come back. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So we uh we can tell that the argument that this is about the shadow economy is a bit misleading because it doesn't have the effects that the preponderance of this policy would like, which then leads us to the other conclusion, which is this is about negative interest rates.
Okay,
And
well, wait. I'm not done giving justifications before we go to negative interest
okay.
rates. So one rationalization is it's going to stop the shadow economy. It's going to stop people buying drugs or whatever, right? Another one is tax avoidance.
Yes.
Cash lets people avoid getting taxed, which is another way. Well, from the point of view of the state, that's also illegal activity. But I think it's worth treating it as a special kind of illegal activity, right? So, any thoughts on that?
um, uh, prohibition doesn't work. Um, I didn't really go into the tax issue that much because I didn't find it too much in my studies or in the research. But
Okay.
I would suspect that the tax issue is similar to the shadow economy in that people will just find another way around it. Anything to add on that? Just from a human
No.
action point of view?
No, I'm getting a little distracted by Silly Sailor saying, why are you calling this a war? I mean, some of us just don't want to use cash. It's not exactly what we're talking about. How do I explain this? Sure, from a consumer point of view, there's various means you can use to pay for things, right? And you can use your credit card, you can use your debit card, you can use Bitcoin, you can use cash. And in a totally free market, all of these things would be available, I think, the things I just named. There'd be various consumer options for paying for things, right? And let the market decide. That's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about that is, the credit card companies making war on cash as sort of a competitor to paying with a credit card. They're going to try to get rid of cash payments. I don't think that's what's really going on here. This is, we don't want transactions that avoid going through the banks. Is that a reasonable way to put it, Matt?
Oh, yes, very reasonable.
Yeah. So this is not credit card versus cash. This is anything that isn't the banking system versus anything that anything that isn't the banking system versus the banking system. That's kind of the way I'm seeing it. So in this sense, then Bitcoin, for example, would strongly be on the cash side of the equation. It is transactions going on that are not going through the banking system, that allow people to store value outside of the bank and avoid the negative interest rates we'll be getting to. Anything like that, anything that lets you do your own banking, so to speak, whether that means storage of value or doing transactions, that is what the cash means in the war on cash. They don't want us doing anything like that outside of the system.
Yes, and just in the essay I linked before, there is a bit on the individual liberties and how the cash ban would affect that. And some of the implications there are very stark because, as some people are pointing out in the chat, when you move to a completely online monetary system, it can be used to manipulate and change behavior. So, for example, the Chinese have their social currency, and they
So
manipulate
social,
who gets
you're
paid
talking about
what.
this? Are you talking about the social credit score? I think it's
Yes,
called. Right.
and they can manipulate how much you get paid on that. If you're better on your social credit score, you obviously get paid more, and so you can manipulate people's behaviors and infringe upon their liberties by forcing them through the point of a gun to use one single type of exchange system that is completely trackable.
Right. So I guess what I'm feel like we're missing is just a little more flesh on the story of what do we mean by the war on cash? Like, well, you've given a few examples. Larger denominations are being eliminated, and I think that's been happening in a number of places. Have you kept track of that? I think you mentioned like one example, but I think it's happened in a number of different countries.
Yes. So the prominent example is probably the Nordic states. They're moving towards a more cashless society. If you bring up that list of countries, I forget what it's called on the names we have on the transactions in cash.
Cash ratios, maybe?
I think if you want to bring that up.
Let me see. Cash ratios across 28 European countries. Sound right?
Sounds right.
Okay, let me get that. There, that one?
That's it. So what
Okay.
we see here is the ratio of cash used as a percentage of exchange. So for a transaction, what percentage of those transactions use cash? So as we see, a lot of the poorer countries, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, they use high amounts of cash for their transactions. But we have a look at the Nordic states, Sweden, Denmark, Finland. They have a lower use of cash for all their transactions. So we see it from those sorts of countries, which way the wind is blowing, shall we say. We also see it from countries like Australia, which are debating, or rather trying to institute a cash ban of above $10,000. So anything above $10,000, you have to use an online transaction. You cannot use cash. And this is like the boiling frog, right? It starts at 10,000, then you go to 5, then you go to 2. You bring it down
Right.
as far as you need to do it.
A couple comments. First of all, I'm surprised at how high those rates are in like Greece, Bulgaria, Romania. I mean, I guess it's not surprising that we'd see some variation, but basically, it looks like Greece is a cash economy, right?
Yeah.
Which is so. I mean, I guess it shows the kind of bubble I'm in here in the United States. It's just hard for me to imagine doing so much with cash. It almost sounds scary in a way, I assume that means Greeks are walking around with a wad of cash in their pocket all the time, right?
Well, do you trust Greek banks after their crash? Would you trust a Greek bank?
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So anyway, that comment, and then oh no, what's the other one? Cash. I'm sorry, I had another thought and I've lost it. Let's see. Yeah, I know. You were talking about 10,000. Yeah, that reminded me that in the U.S. at least, doing transactions over $10,000 at the bank, and this is not even. I'm not sure I would even call this cash precisely, but just large transactions. Now they have to fill out a report or something.
Yes, I
And
believe
if you go ahead.
I believe that was instituted either under Nixon or Clinton, and that was to try and target drug traffickers. So they were
Money
making large
laundering.
payments.
Money laundering. They're always going after
Yes,
money laundering, right?
exactly.
And so if you have 15,000 and you don't want to mess with that $10,000 paperwork, and so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, each day you move $5,000, you can get charged with what I believe is called structuring, which means you structured it to avoid setting the alarm off, which in turn sets an alarm off. So anyway, I don't know that that's exactly about cash, because I think that kind of thing can literally be like moving money from one account to another. But I know for sure that might be the case. I know for sure that if I just go to the bank and want to get $15,000 of cash out, then that's not going to be a very anonymous transaction. They're going to track it and report it, and they're going to tell you they're doing it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so this is the bit of a scary reality that we're trying to face here, is that how far are we willing to allow our civil liberties to be distorted and affected for the need of those at the top to have their plan work?
Right.
Because this cash ban is essentially just another way of controlling us, and it's incredibly scary.
Yeah, and I get the feeling, I think part of the reason I was interested in covering this is I've been aware of it for a while because I read Mises.org, and Joe Salerno highlights it there, for example. But I kind of get the feeling this is flying under the radar with the general population. Have you seen anything different from your part of the world?
It's very topical at the moment because it's an open
Oh,
debate in our parliament at the moment. But
oh.
I would think the average man on the street doesn't know about it.
What are they debating in the Australian Parliament?
The cash ban. So
Oh,
limiting
total.
transactions of cash.
Well, what do you mean? What would if the cash ban went into effect? What would it mean?
You are not allowed to make transactions over $10,000 with cash.
Okay, just not at all.
Yeah.
Wow. There's a book, I should put this link in here. David Gordon reviews it. There's a book called The Curse of Cash. And I don't know how to say this gentleman's name. I've seen it a lot. Kenneth Rogoff, Rogoff. I don't know how to say it. Let me share that. But I guess I felt a little burden, Mad Merc, to demonstrate that we're not just imagining a war on cash. Here's a book where somebody's pushing it, and hopefully we've shared a few other things that shared and will share a few other things that demonstrate that this is really happening. They're really eliminating larger currencies and such.
Oh yes, I have two more links to share that definitively prove that they are, because they openly state that they want to.
Okay.
So I'm sharing this link in the chat if it wants to load. Oh, seems I'm bugging out here.
In the public chat, the YouTube chat?
Yes.
Yeah, I see one.
See one?
What else can central banks do?
It should be a... Yes, I've posted it twice there. So this is from... If I can bring it up. This is from... What else can central banks do? Geneva Report of World Economy. So this is by the World Economy International Center for Monetary and Banking Studies, ICMB. And they state in this very clearly in one of their statements, quote, "Finally, the report examines a development eventually remove the lower bounds on interest rates entirely. The trend towards cashless economies. If cash ceases to exist, so there is no riskless asset with a zero nominal return, central banks can make nominal interest rates as negative as needed to spur recoveries from recessions. As payments,
what page is that?
I believe
PDF page, please.
Yes, going for it finally. That is
okay. I'm on it. Page 63, beginning of monetary policy in a post-cash economy. Just look at that first sentence. I'll highlight it. Wow. And there's no asset with a fixed nominal value.
That's
allow
not
market
it.
participants to avoid a nominal negative interest rate. You see what I'm sharing, right?
Hold on. It is page 22. Page 22.
Okay. I found it in another place too, but I'll go to page 22. Okay, 22.
It should be a paragraph by itself on a page.
You mean, do interest rate cuts still transmit to the real economy when rates are negative?
No, not that yet. So go up. Where is it?
Anyway, I had one on page 63 where you can see them saying it.
It should be in the executive summary. It's the final paragraph of the executive summary.
Okay. I'm just wanting to show chapter and verse because this sounds really crazy.
Go down. There we go. Right there. That's it. Right there. Enlarge the screen so everyone can see it.
Yeah. Can I do that? Yes, I can. That looks better, right?
Yes. So everyone is reading that. We are not crazy. We are not making this up.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Where's this report from? This is
from the
CPR. Who's that?
Central. If my computer wants to load. This is from the International Center for Monetary and Banking Studies.
Okay. Yeah. So, sorry, you were reading it, but let me just highlight that again.
Go right for it. If you want to read it, go for it.
This development may eventually remove the lower bound on interest rates entirely. So that is, they've already been playing with the lower bound by going to negative interest rates, at least from the central banks, right?
Yes.
And then now we're starting to see it hit what they call retail customers, businesses and people, regular people even. And then he says, but they're saying we won't have any lower bound, meaning we already broke zero. Now we can just go as negative as we want, I guess, right?
That's it. Because if you can't pull your money out of the bank.
Right. They can take as much of it as they want, I guess. So if cash ceases to exist, central banks can make nominal interest rates as negative as needed to spur recoveries from recessions. I like that subclause there. Interesting. Some countries are already on their way to eliminating the use of cash. We don't want it to be abrupt, but someday it's coming. That's quite the paragraph.
It's very blatant.
Right. Okay. So what does it say? If cash ceases to exist, I skipped a clause because I wanted us to focus on it. I wanted us to get the high level view. But what does cash mean to them? It's a riskless asset with a zero nominal return. That's how they think about cash from their point of view, right?
Yep.
Someone holding cash doesn't make anything from it, but they say riskless. I mean, people can steal your money, right? But forgetting that for a moment, you're not like investing, I think is their point. It's not an investment. You just hold the cash, assuming no one gets into your mattress and grabs your cash. There's no risk, there's no return, but, and this is the part they don't like, they can't get any of it either, right? It's the zero nominal return. Most of us would read that and say, oh, you mean it's not positive? No, when they write that, they mean we can't make it negative, right? I mean, that's the significance of saying zero nominal return there.
Yep.
And by negative, we mean, what is it Rothbard would always say? Ripping you off.
Yeah.
We can't rip you off if you've got cash in your mattress, without breaking into your house, I guess.
Yeah.
And they prefer to be a little more complicated and subtle than that. Okay, so I guess wait. Okay, so let's actually start moving towards negative interest rates. So let's assume that folks believe that there's a war on cash from what we're showing them, that this is a plan, it's something that's being consciously pursued, talked about at these high levels, among economists and central banks, statist economists, I guess I should say, and central banks, and that we can see evidence of this war on cash in real life by looking for large denomination notes being eliminated, which I feel like I've been seeing this for some years. Little mention of, this $10,000 thing is gone from this country. This $5,000 thing is gone from that country. So I think that's been going on. We see the plan, we see the execution, it's really happening. So that leads us to the next question. Why would they make a war on cash? What's the point? And the point, we believe, is part 2 of our discussion today, and that is so that they can have negative interest rates. this is a really mind-bending thing, right? You figure that the reason that you would keep money in an investment or in a bank is that you at least have the chance of having a return on that money. This might be hard to explain to the young folks, Mad Merc, because when I was young, you could have a savings account and make a couple percentage points on it. Now, what I've seen for a consumer savings account, you're lucky if you get 0.2% or something, right? Aren't you seeing something similar?
Yeah, I would be lucky. I think the highest I've ever seen it in my lifetime is 1%.
Wow, what a different world. So this has changed in my lifetime. It's gone from, it seemed like a reasonable thing to do to keep your money in a savings account to the return is so low. It's like, why would you bother? And you wonder if the banking fees are going to eliminate any money you would make, on the extremely low interest rate. So the interest rates are low, but at least at one time, it made sense to park your money and get some return on it. Certainly, I don't think that. Oh, I'm sorry. Just noticing in the chat, somebody says before the crash of 2008, I was earning 4%. He says, okay, so maybe it wasn't that long ago. So the question then comes, why would anyone keep money in an account with a negative interest rate? That is, you're effectively being charged to have your money there. Now, I have gotten some good answers to that for people with large amounts of money. Okay. And the basic idea is that, and this is for, Apple, the company Apple, or Apple Incorporated, or individuals that are super, super rich. What somebody explained to me is when you are dealing with that kind of money, it isn't so easy to just park it somewhere. And it might actually be worth it to you to park, $10 billion somewhere, even if you're going to pay a little bit for that, to have the security that it's parked in a safe place. So that makes a little bit of sense to me, maybe. How they can get
Safety
away
is
with
relative.
that. Yeah, right. And then, but then you get down to the smaller fry, like regular people like us, and it becomes really mysterious why you would want to keep, let's say you have several $1,000s that you keep against emergencies. Why would you keep that in something with negative interest rates rather than just hold on to it in cash? And I think that is precisely why there's this war on cash, because they don't have a good answer for the person who can reasonably keep their savings or the amount of cash they care about just on hand. They're not dealing with $10 billion. They're dealing with something in the US thousands of dollars range. And that's where the war on cash comes in, is I think to get those small guys. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe I'm missing the picture on what people like Apple are facing.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I got nothing to add. You've hit the nail directly on the head.
Right. So I thought we had an article showing this on the first dollar thing. I had it at some point, and I thought I had it in our chat, but now I don't know where it is.
Is that the one that you
the
shared
German
me on
bank.
Twitter? The effect of negative interest rates on your savings?
Let's see. Yeah, negative interest rate on the first euro. That was the thing that really blew my mind. This German bank is charging customers negative interest rates. I thought this was more recent, though. Darn it, I'm not finding it. We had the name of the bank and everything, but there was a German bank that said, we are going to start charging negative interest rates, not just to the big guys. We're going to charge it to on the first euro, like you put €2 in your account, your savings account, whatever the account is, and a year later, you're not going to have €2 there. You're going to have less than €2.
Is it this one? The Bloomberg article?
Where are you sharing this? In the YouTube? Where are you sharing the article?
It's in our Twitter conversation, sorry.
Oh.
The German banks open floodgates to negative rates for all savers.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. But then I looked at that and it didn't seem, I didn't see that first euro. Yeah, that's what I'd pulled up at first. Let me just check real quick. Charging for people that much more. Well, okay, this is not a bad article to share. Let's share this. Okay. Negative interest rates. Okay. So this is Bloomberg, and it's from December 3rd, earlier this week. German lenders open floodgates to negative rates for all savers. Is that looking okay there? Yeah. Is this scrolling when I scroll?
Yes.
I have too many windows open, so I'm getting confused. Okay. There we go. Okay. So, breaking the last taboo after negative rates imposed by the European Central Bank, they're charging retail clients for their savings. Okay. It's right there in the first paragraph. Charging retail clients for their savings, starting with very first euro in their accounts. So they've already been doing it for like 100,000 or more, 100,000 euros or more. But one small lender close to Munchen, is planning to impose a rate of minus 0.5% to all savings in certain new accounts. But then I did want to highlight one more thing from this article. Prolonged period of negative rates. Okay. Oh, yeah. Years of subpar profitability have left especially small lenders with a few options to offset the cost of the ECB's charges, but except to pass it on to the regular retail bank customer. And then listen to this comment: the floodgates are open. We'll soon see a chain reaction. Banks that do not follow with negative interest rates would be flooded with liquidity. Can you translate that into human speak? So the bank would be flooded with liquidity. That sounds good, but it's bad? Why?
The bank will be flooded with lots and lots of cash. What's the source of it?
Yeah, they're saying if they don't have the negative interest rates, people are going to want to park their money, anywhere they can find that doesn't have negative interest rates. So they'll be flooded with liquidity, and why is that bad though?
Because remember, they want to get these people out spending it. Consumption.
Yeah, right. Consume.
So remember, Keynes hates your savings. And this is all Keynesian economics. So if you have savings in the bank and it is idle there, in his opinion, it's not spending, it's not stimulating the economy. So if they have a large amount of liquidity in the bank, then that money is apparently just sitting there.
Right.
Look, we know that's wrong, but that's the perspective that they're coming from.
Yep, right. So, okay, so what does all this mean? Let me go back to the thing that I thought was most interesting there. Right, so what in the world? Why are they doing this? They're trying to control the economy as they felt they were doing in this whole, at least post-World War II era, right? By playing with the interest rate. The idea was if there's a recession, then we need to get things pumping again. So we'll lower the interest rate. That will induce, businesses in particular to take out loans, start up new lines of business, hire people. People with jobs will spend. And so it'll be sort of self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, right? If we get people working again, they'll spend, and then there'll be business for the businesses, and we can kind of bootstrap the economy back into health by injecting borrowing, injecting loans into the system. Loans lead to jobs, lead to spending. Am I painting the picture about right, Mad Merc? That's sort of the logic that I see here.
You cut out there for a second, but I'll agree.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just saying, the logic is loans lead to jobs, or loans lead to businesses starting up. Businesses starting up or starting new projects. That leads to employment. Employment leads to consumer spending. I think that's been sort of the logic of the low interest rates, right? And so go ahead.
The logic is just to get remember, they work off the idea that aggregate demand is falling, and it is consumption and demand that grows the society. So they're trying to constantly boost the demand by increasing the amount of capital through the circular flow. Remember, we hear the circular flow through all of Keynesian economics.
Right.
Now, they're going to try and grow that in whatever way they see fit. Getting the cashless society, low interest rates, as I think we'll get into, because it's very related to this topic, QE. For those who don't know, that's quantitative easing. So this is all ways to try and boost aggregate demand.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if I could pull up a good circular flow diagram real quick. Not finding one I like.
Now, all of these loans will result in malinvestments within the economy, and as Hayek correctly points out, these malinvestments will come to be very, very bad when they don't pay off, when the situation changes, when the interest rate rises.
Right, and what I think we see a lot of is a huge fear. But weren't you and I just listening to something about this? They were saying that we are maybe it was the U.S. central bank. Anyway, one of these banks was thinking, "Wow, we really are too low on our interest rates, and it's causing like a bubble. So we're going to try to gently raise the interest rate." And then I thought I was reading something about basically the market freaked out and they backed off, and they went back to keeping the interest rate super low. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Were you tagged in the Twitter thread that I had with another economist? And basically, this man was stating that with the Fed's doing the wrong thing. They're raising the interest rates, and that's what's causing the market to crash. And we could see this in 2008 and rah 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 rah. But as you point out very correctly, that these low interest rates that set it off in the first place create the situation where you can't raise it. You don't have the room or the ability to raise it without the market freaking out and then potentially causing a crash. And in the Friedrich article I linked before, it states that very clearly, that these low interest rates affect the ability of nations to manage a recession. Because obviously the idea is that you lower interest rates to counter a recession. Now that creates a bubble, we all understand that. But if you keep the interest rates low, well, you don't have the room to maneuver to actually lower them again, because then you go to zero, or you have to go to negative. So this then comes into the idea of the cash band again. It's all interrelated. It's like a big web.
I was going to share that video from the in the interests of the people.
Very good, guys. A lot of the data that we have is from them. They are very good.
And then let's see which images we haven't shared that we meant to share here. Oh, well, you've got various balance sheets.
Yes.
I think that's what's left, in fact. So what would you like me to bring up?
Just bring up each and every one of them in your
Okay.
own time.
Okay, so no particular.
No particular order, because they all tell the same story, just making sure that everyone understands that it's universal. It's not just a single country going through this.
Right. Okay, well, let's start with Europe. Euro, here we go. Okay, what is the story telling us here? Oh, wow. It seems to have gone up a bit since, say, 2016.
Yes. So
what does it
for
mean?
those,
What
I
does it mean
posted
for the central bank balance sheet to go up?
Right. So I posted in the Deep Lore Radical Liberation Econ Hour chat in the Deep Lore Discord
Oh,
that there was a video that you should watch on quantitative easing. This was prep for this show. I gave everyone homework. And essentially what quantitative easing is the central bank will buy treasury bonds, for example. It will artificially inflate the price of these treasury bonds, and when the bank pays for these treasury bonds by printing money, ones and zeros, and giving that to regular banks, the big banks, which then use that money as loans. So you're creating inflation and getting treasury bond in exchange if you're the central bank. The central bank then puts on its balance sheet that it has that treasury bond. So its asset balance sheet goes up. So the more it goes up in this line, the more treasury bonds it has. The more treasury bonds it has, the more money it printed and put into the system. Is that clear to everyone? Is there any questions, queries, or doubtful points? And so what we're seeing here in the European area is that they've put just under 5 trillion, I believe that number is. I can't see it very clearly. It's very blurry on my screen. But they have obviously over time, since 2000, significantly increased the amount of, well, essentially money running through the system. And if we go, it's not just the European area. So if we go to Japan.
Right. Let me get that real quick. There we go.
You can see they're going through the very same thing. And I think you and I pointed out that the Japanese now own, the Central Bank of Japan also owns 51% of public and private debt in the nation. So they're highly indebted.
Mm-hmm.
If we go to, I believe there's one for Australia.
Yep. There you go.
Not as bad, but not as quite as dramatic. But we have to understand that Australia's GDP is only $1.7 trillion. So in comparison, relative terms, if we go to China, we see they are.
Now, China's story looks a little bit different in the last few years.
Yes.
An overall large trend, but then it seems to be moderating since 2016. But maybe that we covered that a little bit before, that China's just running out of places to spend money.
Yes, they're finding different methods. So we see through 2004 to 2012, there's this big increase in Chinese bank balance sheet, and they understood they couldn't do that forever because it was showing up. So they found new ways of doing it, and we discussed that in the last show. And I think everyone should go watch that because it's very pertinent.
Right. So anyway, so
we can see through all this that they are issuing money at an enormous rate. They are trying to control our civil liberties. They're trying to control what we can and cannot do with our money. They're trying to put in negative interest rates, which will have malinvestments for the economy. And it is all still not working because they are still going through a slow recession, in Europe at least. And the world is going through a slow recession. So when all of this starts to crack, we're going to see the actual results of all this behavior, which is not going to be good.
Right. So there was one more thing I wanted to make sure we share, and then I think we should. The guy that Seb Market, is that it? Yes, little blog post with a fellow that we interacted with on Twitter, I think, a little.
Yes.
Am I thinking the right? Seb Market Rap and Research.
That's it.
Yeah, and I'll just, I'm not sure I'm going to put it on the screen, but I'll just put it here. And then let's go to some questions. But this article talks about why they're doing this, right? If I remember correctly. Sorry, I share it and then I lose it. Come on. Right. So how central banks and negative interest rates are robbing us of hard-earned money. He covers how negative interest rates work, shows that bank profitability has been down in recent years. He's sort of showing it from the perspective of the banks. And then he's very interesting section, savers are hit the most. That is, they are the ones who get punished are the ones who keep money in the bank, right? That's who gets impacted by, negative interest rates and stuff like that in particular. Okay, so let's look at the questions. I may sort of go backwards here. Silly Seller says, from OMO, can anyone explain to me how QE is different from HOMO? People talk about it like it's just a radical new thing. I don't know what OMO means, though.
OMO.
Don't understand.
I don't know. Is OMO an acronym for something, or?
Let's see if he'll clarify. Meanwhile, let me see. Silly Sailor recommends the Keynes Hayek rap.
Yes, that is a quite funny rap.
Agreed. And they actually cover some of the economics.
Malinvestments trick the economy.
Yeah. And I think we already addressed this. Silly Sailor says, but if it's only one bank, wouldn't you go next door? But this article was saying that we're going to see a cascade of banks going to negative interest rates so that there's no escape from this. Christian Chad says, look into the Lebanese banking crisis. The central bank has created a Ponzi scheme with extremely high interest rates. I do not know about that. Interesting. Invidious. There is nothing better than restraining yourself to what coin you have in your pocket. Makes you think more wisely and competently before you spend money.
Yes, fully agree. Be conservative in your spending.
Right. Okay, NVIDIA says in the UK there are some places that you are only able to use a card. My student's laundry place switched without informing us to exclusively card. Yeah, I have to say that's been something that's a little confusing to me because there's this whole emphasis on legal tender laws. That is, which usually, I think libertarians have viewed negatively because a legal tender law is a legal restriction on what you're allowed to accept or refuse as payment. Because one way for fiat money to lose its hold is for people to just start using gold or Bitcoin and saying, I would prefer a money that is more stable or less risky or whatever. I want something different from US dollars. So I only accept gold as payment, or I only accept Bitcoin as payment. I think in the United States, that's actually illegal. You're required to accept the US's fiat dollars as payment.
Yes, I believe
But
someone went to
go ahead.
jail over this. There was
Right. Yeah.
a documentary by Peter Schiff, who's a fantastic Austrian, and he points out that this man went to jail over wanting to create his own currency.
Right. So, so it's a little confusing that they'd go to exclusively card, but I guess the idea is that if you're using a card, it's still denominated in US dollars. So the fact that you don't accept actual cash is not viewed that negatively. Christian Chad says, Radlib, what are your thoughts on Nassim Taleb and his ideas? I followed him a little, but I haven't read his books yet. They're sitting there on my shelf waiting. This idea of anti-fragility seems interesting, so I am interested in learning more, but can't speak learnedly on that quite yet. Oh, this is an interesting comment from Idle Time. 10,000 is small enough. You wouldn't be able to buy a house or many cars without banks. Right. Yeah. $10,000 sounds like a lot day to day, but when you're making a larger purchase, which most of us do during our lives, right, buy cars and houses and stuff like that, $10,000 isn't very much, to put a deposit on a house, say, or to buy a new car if you were sort of foolish as to do that. Okay. Silly Sailor says, isn't this what you want? If they were to abolish cash, don't you think more people would buy gold? Can see this leading to a private gold standard being created. Well, I think they're fighting that in other ways. But I think gold is always something that scares the central banks because it is an independent measure of how horrible their fiat money is. Because you can look at the value of gold in fiat dollars and you can get an idea of how worthless the fiat dollar has become over time.
Yeah. When you remove the gold standard, it's almost like they don't matter how much you print.
Right. Let's see what else. Looking for any other questions here we want to highlight. Rogers says, considering academic agents' recent descent into socialism, you two are the best we have left. Yeah, well,
go on, be fair.
I'm gonna take up this topic with AA hopefully eventually, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt for now because he's very smart and he's not always talking, as he's emphasized in a video just in the last like 24 hours. He's not always talking about what should be. He's talking about just how things work. So anyway,
we don't
that's
want
interesting.
any of this. We don't want any of this sort of stuff to happen. So don't take this as advocacy.
Right. It's warning and try to spread the understanding of what's going on. Harry Channel says the war on cash is obvious. Even low-skilled laborers are increasingly being paid via cash cards, which they then use in lieu of cash. I did not know that. Oh, well, no, wait. Actually, thanks for bringing that up because I did know that. I just hadn't really thought about it. I didn't know it was a wider phenomenon. My 15-year-old daughter is just finishing up a job that she's been doing this semester. And it's exclusively for teenagers to work at it. And they pay very little. It's, like minimum wage, below minimum wage. I don't know. It's around there. And they said that they would only pay her if she had an account to pay it into. So I went to the bank and asked them what we could do. And it's a cash card. It's not a credit card. It's just a card tied to an account. It's kind of like a debit card, but they don't call it that. They call it, at my bank, they called it a my spending card. But basically,
it sounds like a debit card.
Yeah, well, it was unclear to me how it's different. I guess one difference is that they don't let you have cash. I'm sorry, they don't let you have checks on this kind of card. You can only use it as a card to either withdraw cash or pay with the card, and those payments are coming right out of your cash account. So there's no element of loans or floating or anything like that. Okay, I think I caught up with most of the questions that are jumping out to me. Yeah. And then did Silly Sailor ever explain OWO?
Open market operations. Yes, the
Oh, okay. Go for it.
open market operations, you still have to pay back to central bank. The difference is with QE, you don't.
Okay, open market
From my
operations.
limited
Right.
understanding, don't take that as gospel.
Okay, yeah, sure. They do an open market operation, and they basically are putting loans out there or whatever, which will eventually have to be paid back. Whereas with QE, they're just straight pumping stuff in. That's your understanding?
The
Okay.
QE, it's a straight trade, whereas the open market operation is a loan.
Okay. Okay. Well, I want to roll towards wrapping this up for now. I think final closing thought is that Mad Mercenary was saying privately to me that he'd like us to give some more emphasis to some bad things that we think are coming economically, so as to warn people, because you can actually protect yourself to some degree if you can anticipate, say, a downturn or something like that, right? The bursting of a bubble. And as we saw with the balance sheets of the central banks through much of the world, we do see something that looks awfully like bubble type behavior. And we talked about it in China specifically, but I think it's broader than that. Do you have a couple comments on that before we wrap it up? Foreshadowing about future stuff we may cover.
Yeah, I'd like to perhaps put this out here on air so everyone knows about it. Perhaps we can cover currencies, the different type of currencies in the world at the moment, because I think I'm of the opinion that the currency game is a subjective game. You don't have to be the best currency out there. You just have to be better than the other currencies in order to survive. It's kind of like the bear. You don't have to be the fastest kid. You just have to run faster than the slowest kid. So, to me, I'd like to cover currencies more because how you protect yourself and where you put your money will depend on what nation is secure, how's their financial state. And that's where the money's going to flood, and that's where you could potentially make a profit off all this. Because if the demand for a certain type of currency or a certain type of asset is going to go up significantly because everyone's looking for that security when this crash happens, it's not a matter of if anymore, it is a matter of when this crash happens, then you can potentially make a profit or protect yourself while the prices right now are low.
Okay, then final two footnotes real quick from the chat on something, the legal tender law stuff. Silly Sailor says in the UK, legal tender laws only apply to payment of a debt. People are free to negotiate to accept whatever you like otherwise, I guess. And then Chris Primer says in several states you can use gold. He believes Utah is an example of that in the United States. And, West Virginia, sorry. I caught that last comment. West Virginia is a state where gold can be accepted, or I guess I think you can always accept gold. The issue would be being able to exclusively accept gold. To say I want to make a contract with you. You're going to pay me 3 gold coins back. I'm going to loan you something, and you're going to pay me back in 3 gold coins. As I understand it, the usual legal tender laws wouldn't allow that. They wouldn't allow to have a contract that specifies gold repayment. You'd have to accept the fiat money equivalent or whatever. But
Yes.
Evidently some states are playing around with opening that up. So interesting. I don't know if it helps the big picture, but it is interesting. Okay, any closing thoughts? Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up for this week.
No, I think we're good. Good show.
All right. Enjoy your cash while you have it, guys. Sorry for the technical problems today. Okay, bye.